Free transform. Hi guys, today we are starting a whole series of lessons on transform. Yes, of course we have already talked about this topic a little and used free transform, but let's talk about this in more detail. Apply a free transform mode to this house. Let's see what the settings are here. Click the right mouse button. Previously I've pressed the keyboard shortcut Ctrl+T. The first one is scale, which we have already done many times. And we will not dwell on it. Let's use the following option. It is called rotate. So, in this case, you can take your object and rotate it relative to the center of rotation. And then there is such a circle, which is the center of rotation. And if I now point the mouse cursor at the corner of my image near the overall frame, then I see a round arrow. And look, it is rotating. I'm now moving the cursor by holding down the left button. It is rotating around the center. Of course, you can move the center wherever you want. For example, you want to rotate relative to this place. And look, the rotation is already happening in this way. For example, like this. In addition, you can set the location of the center of rotation here, and it will coincide with the nodal points of the overall frame. For example, if I put a point here, then the rotation will occur relative to the lower corner. And if I put a point here, then the center of rotation will be in the middle of my upper side. So, that's how you can rotate the image. You can also set rotation parameters using the top menu. And note that when you rotate, the numbers in the window change. This is the angle of rotation. And of course, you can set it manually. For example, 30, and immediately my object has rotated by 30 degrees. This can be convenient if your precision is needed. Let's see what else you can do. I press the right mouse button again and select the skew. And I take my corner of the image and start rotating it. And you see how my house tilts. And at the same time the degree of inclination changes in the top menu. That's the way it works. You can type this degree manually, or you can just tilt the image. We could get the same thing if we press Ctrl and just move the corner while doing usual free transform. The next parameter is distort. We select it and see how we can work with it. Look, I'm rotating the house in a completely different way. It doesn't tilt in the frontal axis, but it somehow scrolls slightly. And yes, of course, pay attention to how the parameters in the top menu change when I move this point and its coordinates change. X-axis and Y-axis indicators are changing too. The next parameter is perspective. What does it do? In this case, when we set a point and begin to shift it, the point located opposite also shifts, so that we get perspective distortion. For example, if we want to create the effect of a house stretching up like this or this, then we can use this parameter. We can also change the perspective not only upwards, but also to the side, and thus we can get an image of streets stretching into the distance with houses along it. Initially, the house could simply be in a frontal projection, but you can distort it within reasonable limits so that it compiles with the rules of perspective. In this case, the upper and lower line along which our house stands tend to contend at the so-called vanishing point, and this is how the perspective effect can be applied, and vice versa, and to the side. It is such an interesting thing. The next mod is called warp. We will use it and try to create the effect of such a rose, which we have decorated with a ribbon. Well, we initially don't have a ribbon, but there is a rose, and there is a background. And let's edit a ribbon here. I have a file with ribbons, and I choose this one. Select it using a polygonal selection. Copy and paste it into this file. Initially the ribbon is quite large. We will reduce it. Now we rotate it relative to the center, just like that. Something like this. And now let's try to distort it a little, so that the ribbon looks somehow more interesting. Click the right mouse button, select warp. And look, let me turn off the background, so that it can be seen better. We have such an interesting grid that allows us to distort objects in a rather complicated way. Look, I pull one corner, and the direction of the ribbon changes. I can move different segments of this grid, and place the ribbon so that its location is the way I need it. For example, I can pull this corner here, so that it looks more interesting. Pull it more. You can do it for a long time and the way you like it best. And after I put this ribbon the way I need it, I press Enter, and now I can modify it so that it somehow wraps the rows and not just lie on top of it. And you can do it simply. We can zoom in our image. It will be more convenient for us. I reduce the level of opacity. Well, for example, like this. And now I'll remove some parts of the ribbon in those segments where it is needed. And this will create the effect of the ribbon wrapping the rows. Let's take the magnetic lasso. We select some sections of the ribbon that should be at the bottom of the stem. Let's do it this way. And we remove parts of the ribbon. And here, click Delete. I'm doing the same with the area at the very top of our rows. And now we only need to turn on the background and see what we got. And we got this. It will be your homework for today's lesson. Well, I also ask you to practice with various operations, transformations, which I showed you on the example of the house. And that's it for today. It was Peter Romanov and AIM School. See you next time.